But in other parts of their culture, we do start to see the faint stirring of something that can be called American. Farmer Henry Treat made this chest in 1673 to commemorate his wedding anniversary. So this is really the sort of earliest form of American furniture, a six-board chest.
The six-board chest is really the dumbest piece of furniture known to man. It's so simple to make, and yet this shows an early emphasis, a kind of yearning to ornament and to embellish, even amongst people whose situation in life was very tenuous and insecure. This was a frontier community on the edge of the wilderness. It's one of the earliest pieces of American furniture and the earliest piece of Connecticut furniture with its date carved right on the front.
From the days when the West was in the East.
When the West was in the East, right.
Well, when you first see it, it looks like it's just about one notch up the evolutionary scale from a packing case, but what is it?
It's pretty much, I mean, it's simple. This is no backwoods Michelangelo here. It's pretty dumb carving, essentially, but it works, and it creates quite an elaborate effect to an otherwise remarkably simple piece of furniture. There seems to have been this kind of love-hate relationship with nature. One imagines the Puritans as sort of 17th century Daniel Boones at home in the wilderness. A truer picture is that they probably hated the wilderness. It was an oppressive presence on all sides of them, and when they were in their domestic environments, in their homes, they wanted evidence of control, of order, and of artifice, so that they took wood and rendered it colorful, carved, decorative, and even mathematically structured.
The only kind of painting the Puritans encouraged was portraiture. How did they see themselves? This is the only known Puritan self-portrait. It's a Boston mariner in the 1680s, Captain Thomas Smith. The lace at his throat tells you he is well off. The skull that he accepts his impending death. Under the skull, the poem reads, why should I the world be minding, therein a world of evils finding, then farewell world. Such portraits were made as a record, to commemorate a person's social place, to honour his memory after death, and to remind you of the transience of life. Some Puritan effigies, to put it mildly, lack the zing and suppleness of European portraiture. They're awkward shades of virtue, or else they're an index to wealth. These are the Freakes, a pair of New England yuppies in the 1670s. Mrs. Thomas Freake holds her baby, Mary. The nameless painter has done them in an old-fashioned Elizabethan style, flat and formal, but with every detail of lace and jewellery carefully listed. She's a trophy wife, and her minxy little face radiates delight in her status. Her husband, John Freake, a rich young Boston merchant, is just as grandly kitted out with his lace and gloves. Money was a sign of God's approval, so why not show it off? Thus, the Puritans left the first portraits of individual Americans. It is a mistake to think of the Puritans as conservatives. The truth is very nearly the opposite. They invented the idea of American newness, imagined as the sign of a special history. Newness underwrote the American Revolution, and it was the root of the long-lasting belief that Americans are a special case. But they believed in freedom for themselves, not for others. They were not very tolerant or democratic. The legacy of those admirable traits came more from other settlers who arrived in what is now Pennsylvania. This is a meeting of Quakers. No sermon, no singing. They wait patiently for the inner spirit to reveal itself.
I feel much blessed to be in this room with seekers. We have peace, we have beautiful surroundings, comfort.
The Friends settled in Pennsylvania in 1682. They hoped to create a haven from religious persecution, not just for themselves, but for all Protestants. Quakers distrusted the arts, but their ideal of a pluralist society shows in the works of one of their few painters, Edward Hicks. In his numerous versions of the peaceable kingdom, Hicks showed the biblical prophecy that the lamb and the leopard will lie down with the kid and a little child shall lead them. In the background, the colony's founder, William Penn, is signing a treaty with the Delaware Indians. Tolerance really mattered to the Quakers, as it didn't to the Puritans. William Penn made Pennsylvania a haven for any and every Christian sect that wanted to create a new life in America. They came from Switzerland, Germany and France, as well as England. They were Mennonites, Hutterites, Moravians and Amish. The Amish especially have stuck to their traditions, rejecting worldliness and modernity. Indeed, they shun the lens of the camera. The less messianic migrants, known to their conservative neighbours as the Gay Dutch, brought with them the bright heraldic designs of German folk art.
There was no desire to express anything through the art. It was simply to decorate something that they were going to use. Pennsylvania German folk art has to be seen as a copycat art. They imitated a great deal. They copied designs from anything they saw. And you know, one of the designs that came into Pennsylvania German folk art is the unicorn. And a lot of ink has been wasted on the subject of its symbolic meaning. In fact, if you look at it very carefully, it's simply a unicorn taken off of British design elements, coats of arms.
It's from the lion on the unicorn.
Precisely. You can even find the lion as well. I know a piece of Proctor that has two unicorns facing each other, and down underneath it, two lions facing each other. They disassembled the original and reassembled it to match the Pennsylvania German fetish for symmetry.
Like Norman. Norman, he likes to quilt.
Sometimes he says his thimble isn't big enough. So.
Of all the folk arts, one flourished especially among the German migrants and was the work of women. It was the quilt.
A lot of these ideas came from Germany. My parents died when I was very small, but I lived with my uncle and aunt, and the aunt was a great quilter. She did a lot of quilting, and so, of course, I had to learn how to quilt, and I do enjoy it.
The quilts that have attracted the most attention were made by the wives and daughters of the Amish. They're grandly abstract. You can't look at these Lancaster quilts and think, how cute. You may think, how modern. But no, to the Amish, newness was and is anathema. Nevertheless, the work of these Amish women was as much a part of the story of high aesthetic effort in America as any painting or sculpture. They refute the idea that folk art is just innocent social birdsong. Today, the popularity and price of these quilts and of Pennsylvania German folk art in general just grows and grows. It reminds modern Americans of their roots, real or imaginary, in a simpler, pre-industrial time. Americans couldn't bear to live in such a world, but they like to be reminded of it. The great example of this is in the work of the Shakers. Everyone wants Shaker objects, but very few want to lead the Shaker life.
$100, and the number is 182, right there.
Oh, brethren, ain't you happy? Oh, brethren, ain't you happy? Oh, brethren, ain't you happy? Followers of the Lamb. Sing on, dance on, followers of Emmanuel. Sing on, dance on, you followers of the Lamb.
By the mid-19th century, there were more than 100,000 Shakers, but today there are just 8. This is the last Shaker community. It is at Sabbath Day Lake in Maine.
I'm glad I am a Shaker, I'm glad I am a Shaker, I'm glad I am a Shaker, you followers of the Lamb. Sing on, dance on, followers of Emmanuel. Sing on, dance on, you followers of the Lamb.
Founded by